Welcome to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. I'm Bernie Flowers, one of Uncle Sam's wayward children. I believe that our country's best days are still in front of us, but if those best days are to come, we need to change the direction of the country now, before it's too late. I intend to talk about important issues and topics every week in hopes of helping to improve our country and our way of life. Please like, share, and subscribe. Guest for episode 60 is Senate candidate John Myrick. Raised here in Maryland, John has spent his entire adult life in the defense of Marylanders and of this nation. Earlier in his career, he was a Harford County Deputy Sheriff, the only Maryland candidate for the U.S. Senate of either party to have won or worn a badge. John served 23 years in the United States Air Force Reserve, retiring as a highly decorated combat veteran. While serving in the reserves, John worked as a senior civilian intelligence officer for various agencies within the United States intelligence community. He was widely considered to be one of the leading subject matter experts on asymmetric threats and national security intelligence policy. John has lectured on national security issues at many major universities to be exact. He testified before Congress and subcommittees and members of dozens of NATO countries and allied leaders as well. He served as a keynote speaker for international counterterrorism conferences. Retiring from the federal service in 2013, John has been a senior contract consultant for the Departments of Defense, Justice, and Homeland Security. He's currently a senior strategic advisor for the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's CISA, over DHS. He's also gained a unique perspective on how nation-level decision makers make policies that affect us every day. John holds degrees in flight engineering, strategic studies, and national security intelligence policy. He is certified by the U.S. Director of National Intelligence as an intelligence community officer and is a joint duty assignment qualified officer. His military decorations include the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Air Medal, the Aerial Achievement Medal, and several other combat decorations. His civilian professional awards include the Office of the Secretary of Defense Medal for Exceptional Civil Service and the Meritorious Civilian Service Medal, twice over, by the way, and the Commander's Medal for Civilian Service. John is married to Nancy Navarez Myrick of Glendale Heights, Illinois. They reside in Lanham, Maryland. And John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Bernie. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. As candidates together running for office in Maryland, we kind of saw each other on the campaign trail often. We bonded and we become good friends. And
indeed, we have.
Yes, we have. So I wanted to get your perspective on things and have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Well, you're uniquely qualified, so I'll just let it rip. Why do Maryland's Republicans turn out to vote at such a low rate? We only had like a 20% turnout. I think that we would have had some different results if we'd have had more people come out. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, if you look at the history of voting here in Maryland over the past 20 years or so on primary elections, we tend to have about 20 to 22% of the Republicans show up for the primaries. I think part of that is because of the situation with us having our primaries so late in the season that the presidential race is already decided, so most people choose to sit it out and just wait until November. I mean, obviously the problem with that is that you've got a lot of other races that need to be decided that require people to show up. You know, when you have 20% of the Republicans showing up, that means one Republican out of every 5 is the one making the decision on who's going to be on the ballot in November. And quite frankly, I think that's a shame, because people need to have their voices heard, and the only way that we as Americans get that opportunity is to go to the ballot box and actually cast our votes. You and I have both served in uniform. We both defended the Constitution and people's right to go out and vote, or not to vote in some cases. And we've both served in places in the world where people literally are fighting and dying for the right to vote. That right's been secured in blood over the past 250 years. And quite frankly, for people not to do that is very, very disappointing and very sad.
There you go. Well said. Yeah, we've been in a few combat zones, and some people just will never get the opportunity for a free and fair election, and we take it for granted here. And I don't think that's right. And but I got another question for you.
Sure.
People want to hear what you have to say. How can we improve that rate of voting here in Maryland?
Well, again, quite frankly, I think the Maryland GOP and the county Republican Central Committees need to do a much better job at promoting the highly qualified candidates that we have stepping up in these races. I mean, this time around, for this primary, we had the opportunity in Maryland to actually take several congressional seats that are open currently. And there were some highly qualified and outstanding candidates running for those races, including you. There was an opportunity here for Maryland Republicans to really make a difference. But the Central Committees and the Maryland GOP in general did a very, very poor job. They did no job at all in most cases of promoting those candidates, of getting those candidates in front of voters, because the candidates can't do it all. In your case, where you've got a congressional district that encompasses parts of 3 different counties, you were all over the place all the time. I know you were, because like you said, you and I were at a lot of the same events a lot of times.
Man, we kept bumping into each other. We figured, hey, well, let's get to know each other.
Exactly, and and in my case, I was having to canvass the entire state of Maryland. And while most people don't think Maryland's that big, I got news for you. When you got to drive it, and you got to go from Oakland to Ocean City, or from Northeast down to St. Mary's, it's a long way.
Yeah.
And it can't be done. The candidates can't do it all by themselves. They need the help of those organizations to put qualified candidates in front of voters so that people can make informed choices. And also to excite people about the opportunities that Republicans would have to actually make a difference and take some of these seats. Again, we had the opportunity, I think, to take at least 4 congressional seats in this coming election, and to flip a Senate seat for the first time since 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, I think we squandered that opportunity because we were not able to get voters enthused and excited about the opportunity to do those things.
Yeah. Well, we did the best we could. We gave people a chance, but the next question is, why are people so apathetic?
Again, here in Maryland, we've been under Democratic rule, if you will, for decades. Here, the Republican to Democrat ratio is 2-to-1 in favor of the Democrats right now. And while I realize that it's not about the numbers of registered voters, it's the bottom line there is it comes down to how many people show up at the polls. But if you only have a 20% turnout across the board, Republicans and Democrats, you're still outnumbered 2-to-1, when you go to the polls. So I think Marylanders have pretty much at this point resigned themselves to the fact, Maryland Republicans anyway, have resigned themselves to the fact that when you're outnumbered 2-to-1 and we can't seem to get the qualified candidates in front of the voters to excite them, then you're going to wind up with what we've had all along. So they just don't try, and they throw their hands up in the air, quite frankly, and surrender to the way things are. And we're seeing every day what the results of that are when you look at things like what just came out of our state house this year with another $500 million in tax increases, your vehicle registration fees doubling next year, like they weren't high enough already. And these things are only going to continue until we change how things work. The other problem is when people, in my particular race, when people, I hear it all the time, well, we need to win the Senate. We need to win the Senate for the president. Well, that's true, but Maryland wasn't the only seat up for grabs this time. There are several other states where Senate seats will most likely flip Republican, quite frankly, and that makes that argument about holding your nose and voting for a candidate that you think might have a chance to beat the Democrats because they have a record of working with Democrats doesn't hold. And you're seeing the results of that now when you've got candidates who flip their positions literally within days of winning a race against everything that we believe in. Candidates who are now saying that they will not vote with Republicans and that they may not caucus with the Republican Party, which would mean the Republicans wouldn't have the Senate anyway. So, and quite frankly, a candidate who has absolutely zero chance of winning against the Democrat challenger, a highly competent, well-liked, well-financed, and well-endorsed candidate. And we've given up a golden opportunity in this election, in my opinion, and we've resigned Marylanders to Democratic rule in this state, at least at the Senate level, and I believe in the House levels for probably the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And that's sad. That just adds to the reasons why Republican voters don't think their votes matter. And you and I both know a candidate out in the 6th congressional district who lost the last congressional race by one vote in the recount. Yeah. One vote. So I think that gentleman would probably disagree with the people who say my vote doesn't matter. Because had 2 more people voted for that individual, David Trone would never have been a congressman.
We lost a generational opportunity. It's going to be a long time before we see anything like this opportunity again. And I just would have liked to see more people come out as all the effort that we all as candidates put out. And but it is what it is. We're stuck with it now. So, John, the floor is now yours. What would you like to say to the audience?
Well, I mean, again, I encourage people. I know that in a lot of cases, the races did not go the way a lot of people wanted them to go, including you and I, clearly. However, that doesn't mean you give up. That doesn't mean you surrender your vote and not show up. I've heard countless numbers of people telling me, well, I don't like the candidate at the top of the ballot now, so I'm not going to vote. Well, that only hurts the candidates down ballot. There are House races that still need to be decided. There are school board races and local races that need to be decided. There are ballot initiatives on this November's ballot that are very important to Republican voters. And if you sit this one out, if you let the Democrats run roughshod over the state once again without letting your voice be heard, you have no one to blame but yourself. Maryland Republicans particularly need to get out and have their voices heard. I firmly believe that if we could have increased the participation for Maryland voters by a mere 10%, it would have made a significant difference in how the primary went. Right. And if we can do that in the general election, with the reports that are coming out of the press saying that a lot of Democrats plan to sit this one out, the general election out, because they don't like the presidential choices, and quite frankly, they don't think their voices matter either. If we could increase Republican voters at the polls by 10% this time, we'd still have a real shot of actually making a difference. And we'd certainly have a shot at making a difference at the local levels. Those school board races, quite frankly, in my opinion, are more important in some cases than the Senate race or than any House race, because it all starts with educating our children and what's going on in our schools and how our tax dollars are being spent in our own counties. And all that comes down to the school boards. So if you sit this one out, you have no one to blame but yourself. And I really don't want to see that.
There you go. John, I tell you, I can't disagree with you on anything you've said. And 10% would have definitely made the difference, at least in my race. But how can people reach you if they need to?
You know, I've left my website active, and I intend to throughout the campaign or the election season. And on my website, which is johnmyrickforsenate.org, there is a contact us button that you can comment, you can ask questions, whatever you care to put in there, you can. And those comments and questions come directly to me. They weren't, even during the campaign, they were not going to any of my campaign staff. They were coming to me because I felt that if a Marylander had a question that they were taking their time and their effort to ask, they deserve to hear from the person looking to represent them. So all of those questions and comments come directly to me, and I answer every one of them. So if people have anything that they'd like to discuss or they want to bring up, they can reach me through the website. I've been invited to do several speaking engagements. My next one is June 4th down in Calvert County in Prince Frederick. The Calvert County Republican Women's Club has invited me to come down and speak at Bull Rushes in Prince Frederick on the 4th. I welcome people to stop by there, ask questions. We'll be discussing current events and current national policy issues during that time. I'd love to see some folks there.
Tell Tisha and the crew that I said hello, will you?
I certainly will.
Amen. Brother, I tell you, all this time on the campaign trail together, we didn't know each other before this started, and now I consider you one of my best friends. So I appreciate everything that you've done. I know that the conservatives appreciate everything that you've done, and I say stay in the fight, bro, because the world needs you.
Well, thank you, Bernie. I mean, I consider you one of my best friends as well at this point. I mean, again, we didn't know each other at the beginning of the campaign. I was able to see you in action and get to know you and get to know your family. A man of integrity, a man of principle, and quite frankly, those are hard to find nowadays. So I consider it an honor and a privilege to have you as a friend and to be considered a friend by you.
Amen. Well, I guess that's about it until the next time. What do you think?
I think you're right.
All right. Well, that's about it for now. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Liberty Arise Media, Fallback Productions, and other podcasters. I ask that you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast and to this channel. Be sure to get your copy of my book, Black Values Matter, available on Amazon or as an ebook on Audible or on Apple Books. And also, remember, it's okay to disagree. But if we want our country to prosper, we must insist on unity, transparency, and civility from ourselves and our fellow citizens. Thank you for listening to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. See you next week.